It starts with quiet. Not the dramatic kind of quiet you see in movies, but the kind that settles into the corners of a house and sits there for years. Pine branches tap softly at the windows. Somewhere out in the Montana forest, an owl calls once, then falls silent again. Inside, a single lamp spills warm, honey-colored light across a small kitchen table where a mug of tea has gone cool without anyone meaning to drink it. This is where our heartwarming story really begins. Long before a tiny bobcat cub ever wobbles toward a pair of boots for help. It begins with a woman learning to live with her own silence. Eleanor doesn't think of herself as lonely. That word feels too sharp, too dramatic. She'd tell you she's fine, and in many ways she is. She's in her mid-50s now, a retired nurse who has traded night shifts in fluorescent hospital halls for slow mornings under tall pines. Her little cabin sits at the forest edge, a good 15 minutes from town, close enough to see headlights on a clear night, far enough that she can hear snow falling when winter comes in softly. Her closest everyday companion is Scout, an aging shepherd mix who's walked the same dirt road with her for more than a decade. His muzzle has gone grey, his eyes a little cloudy, but his loyalty has never once flickered. If love could grow fur and trot along at your side, it might look a lot like Scout. On this particular evening, day 0, though she doesn't know to call it that, Eleanor stands at the sink, watching the last light slide off the mountain ridge. The kettle on the stove has already whistled and gone still. Her tea sits on the table, steam long since faded. The television is off. She says she's tired of noise, but the truth is, sometimes the silence presses in a little too close. Her phone lights up with a small cluster of messages, a photo from her daughter's kitchen, grandkids she hasn't seen in person for months, a quick, "Love you, Mom," sent in between sports practice and bedtime chaos, a text from her son 3 states away promising that next year they'll make it out to visit. Eleanor smiles, thumbs hovering over the screen, then sets the phone down without replying just yet. "I'll call later," she tells Scout, as if he's keeping track. He lifts his head from the rug near the door, tail thumping once. The simple sound fills the room with a warmth that doesn't need words. It's a small moment, but it carries more emotions than Eleanor lets herself say out loud. In another kind of life, the kind you find in fairy tales or in old family stories, this house might be full. People coming and going, somebody banging a cupboard, the smell of something always on the stove. Instead, there is one woman, one old dog, and the steady ticking of a clock above the refrigerator. For many in this season of life, that picture feels familiar. Children grown and gone, careers folded up and put away like an old uniform. Days that run together in a quiet that can be both soothing and heavy. It's the kind of life where kindness often looks small. Refilling the bird feeder, checking on a neighbor down the road, folding laundry that no one else will notice. It doesn't look like an inspirational story. It looks like getting up, doing what needs to be done, and going to bed with the porch light on. Eleanor rinses her plate, sets it in the drying rack, and wipes her hands on a dish towel that's frayed at the edges. She moves unhurried, the way people do when there's no one else's schedule to keep. Scout watches her, warm eyes tracking every movement. There's a soulful steadiness in that gaze, a kind of quiet moral story written in fur and bone. I am here. I am still with you. Now and then, in the evenings, Eleanor catches the local news. She'll see a clip about wildlife on the highways or a quick shot of a bobcat caught on a motion-activated trail camera, eyes glowing in a flash of light. She feels a small tug when she sees those images. Not fear, but a careful respect. Wild animals have their world, and humans have theirs. The boundary feels clear, at least it does for now. Tonight, she doesn't turn on the TV. Instead, she stands for a long moment with one hand resting on the back of Scout's neck, feeling the slow rise and fall of his breathing. The lamp hums softly. Outside, the forest waits, full of hidden lives. Deer bedding down, mice rustling through dry grass, perhaps even a wild cat threading between shadows, unseen. If you've ever spent a season of your life like this, with more memories behind you than plans in front of you, you might recognize something in Eleanor's routine. The way the bed is made is too neat, The way the table is set is for one, without thinking. The way a house can be both a safe harbor and a reminder that someone used to sit across from you and doesn't anymore. Yet under that quiet, there's something else. A readiness she doesn't have a name for. A small, open space in her chest where love still lives, even if it has nowhere obvious to go. That's the part of us that stories like this really speak to. The part that hasn't given up on kindness or on being needed, even when the world has moved on. Eleanor slips on her well-worn jacket and reaches for Scout's leash. She hesitates for a heartbeat at the door, listening. The wind moves through the tall pines, carrying the faint smell of damp earth and distant snow. It's an ordinary sound. She's heard it 1,000 times. "Come on, old boy," she murmurs, "just to the bend and back." They step out into the cool, fading light. Gravel crunches under her boots. Scout walks a little slower than he used to, but he still checks the same bushes, sniffs the same fence posts, as if tracing the story of every animal that's passed by. To anyone watching from the outside, it would look like nothing much is happening. Just a middle-aged woman and her dog, taking the same walk they've taken for years. But this is the last evening that will ever feel quite this quiet. Somewhere along that dirt road, on the edge of the tree line, a very small life is already struggling, already searching for safety. Before Eleanor knows it, her path and that tiny wild heart will cross in a way that changes them both. For now, though, we stay with her in this before moment, in the gentle rhythm of a life that's calm, if a little bit too still. Because to really feel what happens when a tiny bobcat cub wobbles to her feet for help, we first have to understand what her days felt like without that little presence. As you listen to her story, you might think about your own day zero, the season before something small and unexpected walked into your life and asked, without words, to be cared for. And in the soft crunch of gravel under Eleanor's boots, as she and Scout follow the curve of the road into the twilight, we're already moving toward that moment on day one, when a silent plea for safety will melt her heart and open a door she didn't know was still waiting to be opened. Mornings at the forest edge usually begin the same way. A thin line of light over the ridge, breath turning to mist. Scout's collar is giving that soft little jingle that says, "We're doing this again, just like yesterday." But on this morning, day one, something is standing in the road that wasn't there before. Something small. Something that doesn't quite know where it belongs. Eleanor notices it first as a smudge against the pale gravel. A tiny shadow that seems to sway in place. At first, her mind reaches for what it already understands. A lost kitten, maybe. A stray house cat that wandered too far. The world is full of moral stories that start that way. A human, a kitten, a simple act of kindness on a quiet road. She clicks her tongue, the way she sometimes does to call neighborhood cats, and takes a few slow steps forward. Scout moves with her, then hesitates, the fur along his shoulders lifting in a line. He doesn't growl. He just stiffens. That's the first sign that this is not an ordinary morning. As they get closer, the details sharpen. The ears are too pointed, with dark tufts at the tips. The legs seem long for such a small body, paws oversized, like she's trying on shoes that don't fit yet. There's a scattering of faint spots along her sides, and the tail is wrong for any house cat. Short, thick, with a dark band near the end. This is not a kitten. This is a bobcat cub. She wobbles as if the ground itself is unsteady, takes 2 determined steps toward Eleanor, then sits back down with a thump that looks more like collapsing than resting. Her mouth opens, but the sound that comes out is thin and ragged, half meow, half chirp. It catches in her throat, like she's already spent whatever voice she had left calling for someone who never came. Then, with a kind of fragile courage, the cub stands again and does something that Eleanor will remember for the rest of her life. She walks straight to her boots. Not to the trees, not to the ditch, not away from danger. Right to the human standing in the middle of the road. She presses her side, barely bigger than a pair of hands put together, against the worn leather, as if the scuffed surface might somehow be safe. She looks up, And in that quiet morning air, it feels like her eyes are saying without words, "Please." Eleanor feels her heart react before her mind catches up. Every instinct she has from all those years of nursing wakes up at once. The urge to scoop, to cradle, to protect. The tiny, wild body is leaning on her, asking for love and kindness in the only way it can. If this were a fairy tale, she thinks, this is the part where the lost creature becomes your loyal companion, moves into your home, curls up by the fire, and everyone lives happily ever after. But this is a bobcat, and this is the real world. She takes a slow breath and does something that goes against every soft impulse in her chest. She steps back because somewhere, in the back pocket of her mind, there's a memory of a pamphlet she picked up once from the ranger station. The simple line she read and almost forgot. If you find a wild baby alone, your first job is not to rescue. Your first job is to wait. So she does. She holds Scout's leash a little tighter, guiding him behind her legs. He whines, uncertain, nose working hard as he tries to make sense of this tiny stranger. The cub sways where she stands, then folds awkwardly onto the cold gravel, sides moving fast. Eleanor's eyes go to the tree line. The forest feels closer than ever now, dark and full of hidden eyes. She scans for movement, a flash of spotted fur, the silent presence of a mother bobcat who might be watching, weighing this human and her old dog, deciding whether to come closer or stay away. Minutes pass. The air is chilly enough that Eleanor can feel it in her fingers. She resists the urge to lift the cub off the road, to tuck her inside her jacket, to let herself feel the small heartbeat against her chest. This is the part many of us don't see in heartwarming stories. The waiting, the uncertainty, the way love sometimes looks like standing still in the cold, not knowing what the right answer is, and doing your best anyway. After nearly half an hour, there's still no sign of any adult cat. No sound, except the faint rush of wind and the soft click of Scout's claws shifting on the gravel. A pickup truck appears around the bend, slowing as it approaches. Eleanor steps into the lane, one hand up, the other pointing down to the little form at her feet. The driver rolls down the window, eyes widening. "Is that a bobcat?" "I think so," she replies. Her voice sounds surprisingly steady. "She just came to me." "I don't see a mom." The driver nods once, gives them a wide berth and moves on. The road falls quiet again. Eleanor finally reaches for her phone. Her fingers are stiff now, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the choice sitting in front of her. She pulls up the number for the state wildlife hotline, the one printed on the back of that old pamphlet. She explains what she's seeing, the location, the cub's size, the unsteady walk, the way she keeps pressing against her feet and then sagging down again. The operator listens, asks calm questions, then answers in a voice that carries both professionalism and empathy. "You did the right thing by waiting," they tell her. "But from what you're describing, it sounds like Mom is not nearby, or she can't get to her. We'll contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Can you keep the cub safe and warm, out of the road, until they can meet you?" Safe and warm. Eleanor looks down at the tiny, spotted body resting against her boot. Scout leans forward, sniffing the air, tail low but wagging once, as if he's trying to offer his own quiet loyalty to this fragile little stranger. She nods, though the person on the phone can't see it. "Yes," she says. "I can do that." She slides off her flannel overshirt, the one she's worn on this road so many times, and gently encourages the cub onto it, using as little direct touch as she can. The bobcat totters, then curls into the soft fabric like it's a patch of sun-warmed moss. Eleanor feels the tug again, that deep, soulful desire to hold on, to turn this into a domestic, happy ending. But she reminds herself, and all of us listening, of something important. Wild hearts are not meant to live in our living rooms. Kindness, in this moment, is not about turning a bobcat into a pet. It's about making sure she gets to someone trained to care for her so she can grow into what she was born to be, a sleek, strong hunter of these very woods, invisible most days except for the stories she leaves in the snow. Eleanor lifts the corners of the shirt, forming a makeshift cradle, and carries the cub the short distance back toward her truck. Scout walks close, eyes flicking between the bundle and the trees. The morning sun is higher now, touching the tips of the pines with gold. As you picture this scene, you might quietly ask yourself, if life placed a tiny wildlife at your feet, not just a cute kitten, but a true bobcat cub, what would your first instinct be? To scoop up? To walk away? To call for help? There's no judgment in the question, only an invitation to notice the shape of your own heart. Eleanor settles the cub gently on the passenger seat, still wrapped in flannel, and starts the engine. She's been given clear instructions: minimal handling, keep her warm but not hot, meet the rehabilitator at a safe, agreed-upon spot. As the truck rolls down the gravel road, that tiny body barely moves, but the air inside the cab feels full of new emotions: worry, tenderness, a strange sense of purpose that wasn't there yesterday. This is how an inspirational story really begins. Not with fanfare, but with one tired woman, one old dog, and one wild baby who chose the right pair of boots to lean on. In the next part, we'll step into the quiet hours that follow, the sacred, sleepless stretch, when keeping a bobcat cub alive becomes a night shift of love and loyalty. For now, if this small, heartwarming encounter stirs something in you, you might simply tuck away one thought. There is a number you can call, a place you can support, a way to stand between a fragile life and the road. Sometimes, that's all it takes for a tiny, wobbly shadow to have a chance at growing up wild and free. Not all night shifts happen under hospital lights. Some happen in small kitchens, under one tired lamp, with a wild heart the size of your two hands breathing softly in the next room. By the time the sun has dropped behind the ridge on day one, the bobcat cub has already been examined by a licensed rehabilitator in town. Quick hands, gentle eyes, a stethoscope against that tiny chest. The verdict was cautious: dehydrated, underweight, exhausted, but fighting. There's hope if she can make it through the night. The sanctuary is an hour away on narrow, icy roads. The rehabber decides it's safer to bring proper formula and supplies to Eleanor's cabin, then return at dawn with a transport crate. It's not the usual plan, but the weather, the hour, and the cub's condition all point to the same choice. And just like that, a quiet woman who thought her night shifts were behind her finds herself clocking in again. In the mudroom, they set up a temporary nursery, not the sort you see in fairy tales, all soft blankets and lullabies, but a practical little space that balances kindness and caution. A large dog crate lined with clean towels, a low heating pad wrapped in an old t-shirt so there are no hot spots, a small bowl of water, more for humidity than drinking. The rehabilitator shows Eleanor how to move carefully, how to keep her distance where she can. This is still a wild bobcat, he reminds her gently. We want her to know comfort, but not think of people as home. He measures out powdered formula designed for wild felines, explains the ratio of warm water, the testing of temperature on the inside of the wrist. Eleanor listens the way she used to listen to doctors on the ward, quietly, seriously, storing every detail. When in doubt, a little too cool is safer than a little too hot, he adds. And if she fights the bottle, don't force it. Let her tell you what she can handle. They do the first feeding together. The cub's paws twitch against the towel, tiny claws catching on the fabric as she finds the bottle. Her jaw works with weak determination. A few drops spill onto her chin, and Eleanor's fingers tremble as she wipes them with a folded corner of cloth. There's a lump in her throat she doesn't mention. When it's over, the rehabilitator checks his watch, nods once, and sets his hand briefly on Eleanor's shoulder. Every 3 hours, he says. Call if anything worries you. I'll be here at first light. And then he's gone. Truck taillights disappearing between the trees, leaving the cabin wrapped in night and responsibility. Inside the house feels different. The same walls, the same furniture, the same clock ticking on the kitchen wall. But underneath it all, a new rhythm is beginning. A sacred, stubborn pulse. Stay awake. Keep watch. Eleanor fills the kettle out of habit. The dog, Scout, lies down in the hallway, positioning himself squarely between her and the mudroom door. He's never done that before. It's as if some old loyalty in him has shifted outward, expanding to include the small, unseen life breathing on the other side of that wall. When the first alarm goes off, it's just after 10. The world outside the windows is dark, the forest a single shape. Eleanor pants to the mudroom in thick socks, heart beating a little too fast for someone who's only walked 30 steps. The sound in there is tiny. Not the loud meowing of a domestic kitten, but a thin, rough chirp, like a rusty hinge that's forgotten how to move smoothly. The bobcat cub, she hasn't earned a name yet, stirs when the lamp clicks on, eyes half open, pupils wide. Eleanor's hands are clumsy at first. She spills a bit of formula on the counter, fumbles with the rubber nipple, and taps the bottle too hard to release the bubbles. She huffs at herself, then laughs under her breath. "First night on the job," she whispers. "You'll have to be patient with me." The cub latches after a moment's hesitation. Those paws press again, a little more firmly this time. For a few minutes, the only sounds are the soft suck of milk, the faint rustle of the towel, and the patient ticking of the clock. There's love in the room, but it's not the sentimental kind you see in heartwarming stories. It's practical, focused, almost fierce. When the little belly feels full and round enough, Eleanor eases the bottle away. Remembering the instructions, she angles the cub carefully and rubs gently along the back to help release swallowed air. The burp, when it comes, is almost comical in its smallness. She smiles. Not the wide, happy smile of parties and posed photos, but the quiet one that shows up when something fragile responds to your care. Her emotions are close to the surface now. Worry, tenderness, a cautious hope she doesn't dare fully name. Between feedings, the house falls into a pattern. Midnight, 3 a.m. A thin line between sleeping and not sleeping. Scout becomes her unofficial assistant. He dozes by her bedroom door, but each time the alarm sounds, his head lifts before she even moves. By the second round, he's already waiting in the hallway, ears up, as if checking that she's really going. When she comes back out, he sniffs her hands carefully, taking in the unfamiliar scent. Wild fur, formula, warm towel. There's a moment around 2:30 when the alarm rings and the mudroom stays quiet. No scratch, no chirp, no restless movement. Eleanor stands very still in the doorway, the kind of stillness that nurses and parents know too well. She can't see the cub clearly in the dim crate, only a small shape, too still. Her heart trips. The room feels smaller. She kneels, leaning close enough to see the tiny chest. For a second that stretches far too long, she isn't sure it's moving. "Come on," she breathes, a word barely more than air. And then there it is, a faint rise, a fall, another. The bobcat shifts, lets out the smallest, scratchiest sound, somewhere between complaint and request. Eleanor's shoulders sag in relief. She doesn't even try to hide. She realizes her hands are shaking, and she doesn't bother to steady them before she reaches for the bottle. If you've ever watched over someone through the night, a feverish child, a partner after surgery, an aging parent whose breathing you keep checking, you might feel a familiar tug right here. There is something deeply human about staying awake so another living being can rest. It's not glamorous. It doesn't make headlines, but it writes loyalty and love into the bones. By the time the last feeding of the night comes, just before dawn, Eleanor has found a rhythm. Measure, mix, warm, test, feed, burp, and note the time on a scrap of paper. She moves more smoothly now, with less clatter, fewer spills. The cub drinks more strongly, paws working with a new intention. In the quiet kitchen afterward, Eleanor sits at the table with her cooling tea, listening to the house settle. The sky outside is beginning to lighten. Scout snores softly in the hallway. The bobcat cub, full and warm, finally sleeps without those restless, desperate twitches. Eleanor traces a circle on the tabletop with one finger and thinks about how strange it is that life can still ask this much of her. She'd thought the big chapters were behind her, The hard nights, the important decisions, the moments where somebody's survival partially depends on her hands. Yet here she is, once again holding a thread between life and loss. Only this time, the patient has tufted ears and a spotted coat, and the goal is not to bring her home forever, but to give her a chance to go back to a world where humans are only distant shadows. That's a different kind of kindness, a quieter love, a more complicated sort of happy ending. If you're listening to this at night, you might let your own shoulders drop just a little. Maybe remember a time you kept watch for someone or something you cared about. Those memories belong in this story too. They're part of the same long chain of care that reaches from hospital beds to forest edges, from newborn grandchildren to wobbly bobcat cubs. Outside, tires crunch on the gravel. Headlights sweep briefly across the window. The rehabilitator has come back, right on time, to carry this wild heart to the sanctuary, where her real training for life will begin. In the next part, we'll follow Eleanor into that new place. A simple working refuge, where small milestones become big ceremonies, and where love learns to step back, so wildness can step forward. For now, it's enough to know this: one long, sacred night has been survived. And sometimes, that's the quiet miracle that makes all the other miracles possible. Some places celebrate with cake and candles. Here, in the sanctuary, the celebrations are quieter. They sound like a stronger swallow, a first clumsy paw swipe, a tiny body using a litter pan all on its own. Week 1 is not dramatic. It's measured in ounces gained and breaths that come a little easier. But for a wild bobcat cub who almost didn't make it, those small changes are big ceremonies. The sanctuary itself isn't anything out of a fairy tale. It's a low building outside of town, with metal-sided walls, the smell of pine shavings and disinfectant, and a row of outdoor enclosures stretching toward the trees. It's practical, a working place built on kindness, not show. When Eleanor pulls into the gravel lot that first morning, Scout is in the truck with her. She takes him for a short walk along the edge of the property, keeping clear of the fenced areas. The air is crisp, and birds are already arguing in the cottonwoods. She feels that familiar flutter in her chest, part worry, part hope, as she walks up the path to the intake door. Inside, the rehabilitator she met last night greets her with a tired smile. He's already been up for hours, tending to owls with wing injuries, raccoons who stayed out too late near the highway, and a fox that's learning to put weight on a healed leg. "She did all right," he says before she even asks. "You bought her time with that night." The words land softly. Eleanor nods, not trusting her voice just yet. Love and loyalty don't always come with big speeches. Sometimes they sound like a simple, "She made it." He leads her down a short hallway to a small, dim nursery room. There's a row of crates, some empty, some with blankets piled just high enough to hide whatever's sleeping inside. White noise hums quietly in the background, steady and soothing. Near the far wall, in a crate set partly away from the others, is the bobcat cub. She looks different in this light, under careful eyes. Less like a victim, more like a patient, a wild heart on the mend. Her ears twitch when the door opens. She lifts her head, blinks slowly, and lets out a soft chirp. It's still thin, but it's there. "We're keeping handling minimal," the rehabber explains. "But I want you to see how we work, so you'll understand what you helped start." He moves with that calm efficiency that comes from experience. Finally, thermometer and clean bottle, prepared in a smooth series of motions. He talks as he works, explaining why this kind of milk is used instead of cows, why temperature matters, and how wild kittens and cubs can get sick so fast if their stomachs are pushed too hard. Eleanor listens, taking it in, not like a tutorial, but like a survival story. These details are their own kind of moral stories. Not about right and wrong in a loud way, but about what it really takes to give a wild animal a fair chance. When feeding time comes, he opens the crate just enough to reach in. The cub's paws twitch just like last night, but there's more strength behind the movement now. She searches, finds the bottle, and latches on with a determination that feels bigger than her size. Her ears angle forward, her throat works with the rhythm of swallowing. Less formula dribbles down her chin this time. "That right there," he says quietly. "That's a win." It would be easy, watching from the outside, to miss the weight of this moment. It's not flashy. There are no dramatic music cues, no applause, just a small bobcat doing something her body couldn't quite manage yesterday. But for Eleanor, it might as well be fireworks. She feels something loosen in her chest, a long, slow exhale she didn't know she was holding. The emotions are not loud, they rarely are at her age, but they are deep. Hired gratitude, a quiet kind of love that knows this cub will never belong to her and loves her anyway. The days of that first week find their own pattern. In the mornings, Eleanor comes to help with the unglamorous work, washing bowls, cutting cardboard for enrichment, sweeping floors. She doesn't push to be near the bobcat all the time. She respects the rules. She knows this is about Coda. The name will come later, becoming more wild, not more tame. Still, there are moments. One afternoon, as she mops near the nursery doorway, she glances over almost by accident and sees the cub sitting up, licking her paw with slow, deliberate strokes. The movement is clumsy, but clearly practiced. Paw to nose, paw to ear, a tiny body remembering what it's supposed to do. The mop stops. Water drips quietly onto the floor. Eleanor just stands there, one hand still on the handle, watching. "If she's grooming," the rehabber says softly behind her, "that means she's got a little extra energy. It's a good sign." Her system isn't just surviving, it's resetting. It's such a simple thing, a bobcat licking her paw. But for Eleanor, it feels like witnessing a prayer being answered, one small swipe at a time. It touches something soulful in her, something that believes in happy moments that don't need to be big to matter. A couple of days later comes another small ceremony. In one corner of the nursery crate, the rehab team has set up a shallow pan with sand and soil. They've been watching, hoping instinct will eventually kick in. On the fourth morning, Eleanor arrives and finds a note on the whiteboard near the door. "First success in the pan. No accidents overnight." She laughs aloud, a sound that surprises her with how light it is. Who would have guessed that at this stage of life, she'd be this happy about a wildcat's bathroom choices? Yet here she is, celebrating litter pan victory like it's the start of an inspirational story. It's a reminder that love and kindness rarely look glamorous up close. They look like sleepless nights, careful measurements, and yes, being proud of poop in the right place. If you think back on your own life, you might remember similar moments. The first time a grandchild made it to the potty on time, the day an aging parent stood up without help, the morning a rescue dog finally trusted you enough to sleep on its side. Those are the heartwarming stories that never make the news, but they stay with us because they speak to a simple truth. Small steps can carry enormous emotions. By the end of week 1, the bobcat cub's eyes are clearer. Her coat looks a little smoother. She has started to bat, just once or twice, at a feather dangled on a string. The movement is ungainly, her coordination not quite there yet, but there's a spark in it. The first flash of the hunter she's meant to become. Eleanor watches from a distance, standing near the doorway, careful not to speak. She feels a complicated mix of joy and ache. Each little milestone tells her the same thing. This cub is moving forward, one step closer to the day when she won't need humans at all. That's the point. And also, strangely, the part that tugs at the heart. The fresh perspective in all of this is simple. Sometimes, the most powerful love we can offer is the kind that prepares someone to leave us. Not in anger, not in rejection, but in fulfillment of who they were always meant to be. As week 1 closes, the sanctuary settles into evening. Lights go off in the hallway one by one. Out in the enclosures, other animals curl into their chosen corners. In the nursery room, the bobcat cub sleeps with one paw resting on the edge of her towel, as if holding onto her own small island of safety. Eleanor walks back to her truck under a sky brushed with stars. Scout's leash looped loosely around her wrist. She feels tired, but it's a good tired. The kind that comes from being part of something that matters, even if your name is never printed on any sign. In the next part of our story, the days will stretch into weeks. Coda's world will get bigger. She'll move from nursery crate to outdoor pen, from wobbling to climbing and pouncing, and Eleanor's life will begin to shift around this new rhythm in ways she doesn't quite see yet. For now, you might pause and think about the small milestones in your own world. The ones that don't look like much to anyone else, but mean everything to you. Those moments deserve their own quiet ceremony too. Some changes arrive loudly. This one arrives in tiny increments. A few extra ounces on a scale. A new sound in an enclosure. A woman who doesn't realize her whole day has rotated around a bobcat cub's feeding chart. By weeks 2 through 4, the crisis has passed. The danger of that first night is easing. What's left is the slow, steady work of growing. For the cub, and quietly, for Eleanor too. The sanctuary whiteboard tells the story in simple marker lines. Week 2, stronger swallow. Week 3, teeth coming in. Week 4, first outdoor pen. For the staff, these are routine notes. For Eleanor, they might as well be chapter titles in an inspirational story she never expected to be part of. Her mornings begin differently now. Where there used to be long stretches of unplanned time, there is a gentle structure. Coffee was poured into a thermos instead of a mug. Scout's leash looped over a chair, ready. A glance at the clock near the door to make sure she doesn't miss the good driving light. She still lives alone. The house is just as small, the forest just as vast. But it doesn't feel quite as empty. There is a wild heartbeat out there now that she's thinking about from the moment she wakes up. At the sanctuary, she doesn't march straight to the bobcat room. She signs in, pulls on worn work gloves, and joins in with whatever needs doing. Rinsing food bowls, folding towels, filling water buckets for the permanent residents. Kindness here has a rhythm. It looks like chores done on time, routines repeated without fanfare, loyalty to small lives that can't say thank you. Only after the morning rush does she check the board and see the note. CUB, ready for short viewing from doorway. They've started calling her the Cub less and using the name one of the younger rehabbers wrote down as a joke that somehow stuck. Coda. It means friend in more than one language, they say. No one remembers exactly who chose it first, but everyone uses it now. Coda. The first time Eleanor sees her in week 2, there's a shock of difference. The fur looks smoother, the eyes are clearer, more alert. The movements, while still awkward, have a thread of purpose running through them. This isn't just a tiny creature trying to stay alive anymore. This is a bobcat beginning to remember what it is. Coda walks, not crawls, walks, from one side of her nursery crate to the other, pauses, then turns back. It's a small loop, but Eleanor can see the fight in every step. On the third visit of that week, Coda does something that makes the whole room feel lighter. She stalks a feather. It's nothing fancy. A rehabber has tied a loose feather to a length of string and dragged it along the towel. Coda's eyes fix on it, body dropping low. And then she pounces, front paws landing a little short, hind legs sliding. She looks surprised by her own movement, as if her body decided her mind caught up. Eleanor almost laughs, but holds it in so she doesn't startle her. The emotions that rise in her chest are simple and deep. Admiration, tenderness, a pride that makes no logical sense. She's not Coda's owner. She never will be. But in that moment, seeing this small, wild heart act on its instincts, she feels a warmth that goes beyond ownership. That sounds small on paper. In person, it means Coda chews everything. The towel, the edge of the dish, the wooden perch in the corner. There's a new energy in her movements, a restless curiosity that can be both funny and a little intimidating. It's not aimed at anyone. It's just Coda trying out her voice, testing what her throat can do. The rehabber glances over and smiles. She's finding her confidence, he says. That's good. Fearless in here means cautious out there later. It's a perspective Eleanor wouldn't have thought of on her own. In fairy tales, a brave animal is usually sweet and tame with the hero. Here, in real life, love looks like letting Coda become a little less cute and a little more formidable every day. That's how she'll survive once she returns to the mountains. By week 4, the big move happens. The team decides Coda is strong enough for a larger, more natural space. An outdoor pen with logs to climb, branches to hide under, and real dirt under her paws. Eleanor stands a few yards back as they carefully transfer her. For a moment, she sees that tiny, wobbly cub from the road again and feels a flicker of worry. What if it's too much? Too big? Too soon? But the moment Coda's paws touch the ground, something in her posture changes. A nose lifts, drawing in every scent. Pine, old leaves, the faint musk of previous bobcats who've passed through this same training space. She doesn't cling to the carrier door. She doesn't look back for comfort. She steps out, slowly at first, then with more purpose, tail twitching. Watching from outside the fence, Eleanor feels a strange bittersweetness. This new enclosure is exactly what Coda needs. It's also a step farther away from her. The glass between them, the mesh, the distance. All of it is intentional, ethical, right. Yet the human heart is what it is. It loves, and then it wants to keep. Greetings later at the sanctuary picnic table with her thermos. Eleanor thinks about how this tiny bobcat cub has softened her quiet life in ways she didn't see coming. Her days have more structure now. Her evenings have more to think about than old regrets or endless news cycles. She started taking Scout for a walk near the river after her shifts. Not to fill time, but to let her own thoughts stretch out. Sometimes she talks out loud without meaning to. "You should have seen her today," she tells him, tossing a stick he no longer chases but still likes to watch.
"Went after a feather like it had insulted her ancestors."
He thumps his tail as if this is a perfectly reasonable conversation. If you've ever had a period in your life when you felt unneeded, you might understand why one tiny heartbeat can change the whole shape of a day. It's not that Eleanor's life was empty before, but now there's a thread of purpose running through it again. A line of loyalty that connects her small cabin, the old dog at her feet, the volunteers at the sanctuary, and this wild little presence learning how to be a bobcat. The fresh perspective here is simple but profound. You don't have to bring an animal into your living room to let it into your heart. Love and kindness can flow through fences, through careful distance, through hands that clean enclosures and refill bowls. Sometimes the most soulful connections are the ones where we protect a creature's wildness instead of taming it. As week 4 closes, Coda has a new routine. She naps tucked under a fallen log, ears flicking at every distant sound. She practices short, explosive sprints from one end of the pen to the other. She stalks leaves as if they're worthy opponents. Each of these small acts is a rehearsal for the life waiting beyond the sanctuary fence. Eleanor watches all of this unfold, often from the shade of a nearby tree, Scout resting by her side. She's starting to sense what's coming next. A season where Coda's world will grow even larger, where the training will focus less on healing and more on preparing her to disappear back into the landscape. Part of her doesn't want to think about that. Another part, the part that knows about aging and letting go, understands that this is exactly what all their effort has been for. In the next chapter of this journey, we'll follow Coda into that threshold space. No longer fragile, not yet free, and see how Eleanor learns to love with open hands as the boundaries between human and wild become even more important. For now, you might take a quiet moment to notice the Codas in your own life. The small commitments, the quiet lives, the everyday rituals that have softened your days without fireworks or fanfare. Those heartwarming stories may be the ones carrying you more than you realize. Some kinds of love pull you closer. This kind does the opposite. It loves enough to step back. By weeks 5 through 8, Coda is no longer the tiny, wobbly bobcat cub from the road. She's longer, stronger, eyes bright, paws silent on the dirt. Her world inside the sanctuary has grown, and so has the space that needs to stay between her and the humans who helped her survive. This is the part of the story where the rules of love change. At first, Eleanor doesn't notice it all at once. The shift comes in little pieces. A new note on the whiteboard. Coda. Human contact reduced. View from distance only. Feeding times, once done in the quieter nursery, now happen in the larger pre-release pen at the back of the property. Food is dropped in through a slot, not carried in by hand. Voices stay low. Faces are glimpsed, not lingered over. We're in the wilding up stage, the rehabilitator explains one morning as they walk the path toward the enclosures. She knows people kept her alive. Now she has to relearn that people are also dangerous. That's what will keep her safe when we're not here. Eleanor nods. The logic is clear. The emotions less so. From the outside of the enclosure, Coda looks every inch a young bobcat now. She moves differently. Body held low, head still, ears swiveling at every sound. Her coat is thickened against the colder air. She slips between brush and shadow with a confidence that wasn't there a few weeks ago. When food drops in, she doesn't rush to it the way a pet might. She pauses, listens, checks the air, then circles in from another angle, testing for danger before she eats. That's good, the rehabber murmurs. Suspicion is her friend now. For someone raised on fairy tales and heartwarming stories where animals and humans blend into one family, this can feel almost wrong. Our culture is full of moral stories about loyal animals who choose people as their forever pack. But this isn't that kind of tale. This is a love story that lets a wild thing stay wild. One windy afternoon, Eleanor gets to see exactly why these boundaries matter. Storm clouds have rolled in low over the ridge. The air feels tense, electric. As she makes her way toward Coda's pen to help with evening tasks, a sharp crack splits the air. A large branch giving way somewhere in the stand of pines behind the sanctuary. The sound is loud enough to make Scout, waiting by the truck, bark once and then fall silent, ears pinned back. Eleanor's first thought is of Coda. She hurries to the viewing area, heart thudding. Inside the pen, the bobcat is nowhere to be seen at first. No small body by the log, no familiar shadow near the shelter box. Then, as her eyes adjust, she spots Coda tucked deep under a pile of brush, eyes wide, every muscle coiled tight. When another gust rattles the fence, Coda lets out a low, rough growl. It's not the thin sound of a frightened kitten. It's the sound of a young predator making herself big in a world that feels suddenly unsafe. Eleanor's instinct is to speak, to soothe, to use the same soft voice she used during those first night feedings. But the rehabber, who has come up behind her, gently touches her elbow. Let her work it out, he says quietly. If she gets used to us as comfort, she'll look for people when she's scared in the wild. Out there, that won't end well. So Eleanor does something that goes against almost every human reflex she has. She stays silent. She stands there in her jacket, hands tucked into her pockets, watching this young bobcat handle her own fear. After a long while, Coda's breathing slows. She inches forward, testing the air. She doesn't come to the fence. She doesn't look for humans. She does what a bobcat is meant to do. She listens to the wind, reads the space, and decides on her own when it's safe to move. It is a strange kind of love, to feel proud and a little rejected at the same time. Back at the truck, Scout leans into Eleanor's leg, sensing the weight in her shoulders. She rubs his head, grateful for the simple loyalty of a dog who is allowed to be close, who's meant to share space and warmth. Different rules for you, she murmurs. Different rules for her. If you've ever watched a child, a friend, or even a younger version of yourself move from needing to be comforted to learning to stand alone, you might recognize the mix of emotions here. There's relief, yes, a sense that they're becoming who they need to be. But there's also a quiet ache, a soft awareness that your role is changing, whether you're ready or not. As weeks 5 through 8 move along, that theme repeats. Coda's meals become less frequent, but more substantial. Small prey items are introduced, teaching her how to hunt, not just how to eat. She starts leaping to higher perches, muscles bunching and releasing with a grace that looks almost like dance. Sometimes she stares out beyond the fence, nose lifted, catching scents on the wind from the forested hills beyond. Deer, rabbits, maybe somewhere far away, another bobcat she'll never meet. She's thinking about out there, one of the staff says. That's where her mind needs to live now. For Eleanor, those moments land deep. They're a reminder that this story was never meant to end with a bobcat asleep by her fireplace. The happy ending here is not closeness, it's distance, safety. A life lived on Coda's own terms, unseen and unowned. It offers a fresh perspective on love and kindness. Most of us grew up believing that love proves itself through holding on, staying, clinging, keeping. But standing at that fence line, week after week, Eleanor starts to see another form of love. The kind that steps back so someone else can move forward. The kind that respects boundaries, honors wildness, and trusts that letting go can be as sacred as holding tight. On a quiet evening at home, she sits at her kitchen table with Scout at her feet and writes Coda's name on a small slip of paper, not as a claim, but as a way of acknowledging what this wild little life has done to her own. Koda. She looks at the letters and realizes that, without meaning to, she's created a small ritual for herself. Her own heartwarming story, folded into the bigger one. This bobcat will never know her name, never understand the loyalty and love that traveled from a gravel road to a sanctuary, through sleepless nights and careful fences. But Eleanor knows, and that knowledge has changed her. If you pause for a moment, you might think about someone or something you've had to love with open hands. A child leaving home, a friend drifting into a new season, even a dream you had to retire so another could live. Those experiences carry emotions that are hard to name, but deeply human. They show us that love is not one shape, but many. As week 8 comes to a close, the talk at the sanctuary shifts. People start using words like spring, release site, and soft release pen. Plans are made to move Coda even farther from human sounds, into a transitional area where she'll have to rely almost entirely on her instincts. Eleanor listens, heart steady but full. She knows what's coming. She can feel the next chapter gathering like weather on the horizon. In the next part of this journey, we'll ride with her up those mountain roads to the place where gates open, fences end, and a wild cat steps into her own life without a backward glance. For now, you might simply hold this thought close. Sometimes, the most soulful, inspirational story isn't the one where love brings someone home. It's the one where love walks them to the edge of their world, opens the way, and trusts them to go on without us. Some days don't fade, no matter how many years stack up on top of them. For Eleanor, one of those days begins with frost on the grass and a crate in the back of a truck. Month 6. Early spring. The mountains above town still hold streaks of snow, but down here, the fields are waking up. Meadowlarks are trying out their first songs. The air has that sharp, hopeful smell it gets when winter finally loosens its grip. Coda is in a covered transport crate, settled low and quiet. There's no trembling now, no exhausted wobble. When the truck bumps over a pothole, Eleanor can hear the faint scrape of claws against plastic. Not in panic, but in patience. Somewhere in that crate is a young bobcat who has outgrown the sanctuary's fences. If the early chapters of this story felt a little like a fairy tale, a tiny creature wobbling up to a pair of boots, a night shift of love and loyalty, then this part is something different. This is the grown-up part of the tale, the one where wildness and safety are both honored, and where happy doesn't mean happily ever after in a house. It means alive, unseen, exactly where she belongs. The truck climbs a narrow fire road, tires crunching over gravel and patches of packed snow. Pines close in on both sides, tall and still. No one talks much. There's not a lot to say. Everyone in the cab knows how much work, how much kindness, how many small, quiet decisions led to this ride. At a gated turnout, they stop. Beyond the gate, a a stretch of land rolls out. Brush, rocks, a thin ribbon of creek, no houses in sight. It's public land, but far enough off the main trails that most people never see it. For a bobcat, it's as close to a good start as humans can offer. They carry the crate to a small temporary pen they've set up as a soft release area. It's simple. Mesh sides, natural ground, one open corner facing thick cover. The idea is straightforward. Give Coda a safe place to step out, catch her bearings, and choose the moment she disappears into the brush. Years later, when Eleanor tells this part of the story, she'll remember the way her hands felt on the crate handles. Not strong or heroic, just steady. She'll remember the sound of the latch, the way her heart moved up into her throat when the gate swung inward. The rehabber kneels by the crate and looks over at her. "You ready?" She gives a small nod. It doesn't matter that Coda doesn't know her name or the content of her emotions. Eleanor wants to be fully present for this, not glancing away, not half here. The door of the crate opens. For a moment, nothing happens, just the wind moving softly through last year's grass. Then a spotted paw appears, stretching out, testing the air like it's something solid. Another paw, a cautious step forward. Coda emerges in stages. Head, shoulders, long hind legs. She is smaller than a mountain lion, larger than a house cat, and somehow more than either. The sunlight touches the black bars on her legs, the tufted ears, the white patches on the backs that will one day flash danger to anything hunting her. She stands in the doorway and just listens. It is a long listen, longer than feels comfortable. She takes in every sound, every scent. The humans behind her, the creek ahead, the echo of ravens in the trees, the faint trace of deer that passed here before dawn. There is a part of Eleanor that still hopes, against reason, that Coda might turn just once, that she might glance back at the people who fed her when she was too weak to stand, who kept her warm and safe. She doesn't. Without a backward look, Coda slips out of the crate, drops low to the ground, and walks toward the broken line of brush at the edge of the pen. There's no drama, no final roar, just the quiet, efficient movements of a young bobcat doing what she was born to do. At the open corner, she pauses, disappears into a tangle of branches, and then she's gone. The pen is suddenly just a wire. The crate is just plastic. The air somehow feels bigger. Eleanor stands there, one hand still resting on the gate, and lets her emotions rise and settle in their own time. There is a sting behind her eyes, but she doesn't wipe it away quickly. Grief and gratitude are neighbors here. They both deserve a chair at the table. She thinks of the frightened scrap of life that pressed against her boots on that cold dirt road. She thinks of the sacred night shift, the mumbled reassurances to a creature who never spoke her language, the small milestones that felt like holidays. And then she thinks of the years ahead that Coda might have, hunting, hiding, raising kits of her own in some hidden rock den none of them will ever see. The story will go on without witnesses. There's something profoundly soulful about that. We leave the truck and the fire road there for a moment, and we move forward in time. Years later, Eleanor sits on her porch in the late evening, the same mountains watching over her. Scout's collar hangs by the door now, a little worn from the years, a small circle of love that once jingled on that dirt road. At her feet lies a different rescue dog. Younger, clumsier, head heavy on her shoe. Life has kept moving as it does. Her hands look older when she folds them around a mug. The veins stand out a little more. The skin is thinner, but those hands remember how to steady a bottle, how to open a gate, how to let go. Sometimes, when the night is especially clear, she sees movement along the tree line, a shape slipping between trunks, a low form on a rock, ears pricked against the sky. It might be a deer, a fox, a different bobcat entirely. It might be Coda. She knows better than to romanticize it, to insist that the wildcat in the dark is hers. But she allows herself a quiet, happy thought. Somewhere out there is a life she helped tip toward surviving. A life that owes her nothing and yet is tied to her by a thread of kindness and loyalty she can feel, even if she can't prove it. When she talks about Coda now, and she does, when neighbors or family ask about the sanctuary, the story doesn't sound like a textbook. It sounds like the kind of heartwarming story older people tell when they think no one's really listening. Simple, steady, full of emotions tucked between the lines. She doesn't say, "The moral is." She doesn't draw a neat line under it. She just describes what happened.
A tiny bobcat cub walked up to my feet one cold morning and asked me, in her own way, to keep her safe. I couldn't keep her, but I could help her get strong enough to leave.
And then she adds, almost as an afterthought,
It made the house feel less empty for a while, and somehow it made the forest feel more like home, too.
that, in its quiet way, is an inspirational story. Not because it's big or dramatic, but because it reminds us that our capacity for love doesn't retire when we do. It shifts. It reaches toward new things, wild things sometimes, and finds fresh ways to be useful. If you're listening to this, and you're in a season of life where many chapters already feel written, you might let that thought sit with you for a moment. It's not too late for your kindness to ripple outward. It's not too late for your loyalty to make some corner of the world a little safer, a little softer. In the final part of this journey, we'll step back one more time and look at what remains after the footsteps fade. The subtle changes in Eleanor's days, the quiet hope she carries for the woods around her, and the way a single wild cub can reconnect a person to nature, to memory, and to themselves. For now, you might simply remember a moment when you had to open your hands and let something or someone move on. Maybe you didn't get a thank you. Maybe no one else knew what it cost you. But somewhere, in the larger story of things, that act of letting go may have been its own kind of happy ending. When a wild animal leaves your life, it doesn't slam the door, it just stops appearing. The footsteps fade. The branches stop rustling quite so close. The trail cameras stay empty a little more often. And yet, if you've really cared, something of that creature doesn't leave at all. It stays in the shape of your days, in the way you move through the world afterward. For Eleanor, life after Coda's release looks, on the surface, a lot like life before. The same small house at the forest edge, the same old mug in the kitchen, the same dirt road winds past the pines. But if you watch closely, the details have shifted. There is a little more intention in what used to be a habit, a little more tenderness in the way she treats the ordinary. Where she used to hurry past the window, she pauses now, not to look for Coda specifically, but to notice who else shares this patch of earth. A jay arguing from the spruce, a deer stepping carefully along the property line, a pair of rabbits frozen in the dusk. Once you've bottle-fed a bobcat and walked her to the edge of freedom, it's hard to see any living thing as just an animal again. One evening, a neighbor drops by with news of a bobcat sighting near the creek. Years ago, this might have been a piece of gossip, something to joke about or worry over. Now, Eleanor listens differently. She asks gentle questions. How far away? Was she hunting? Did she seem healthy? There's no fear in her eyes, only a quiet loyalty to a species she has come to respect. She doesn't say, "That might be Coda." She knows better than to turn wildness into a personal fairy tale. But she does feel a small, warm lift in her chest, the kind of emotion that doesn't need proof to feel real. In her mind, all the bobcats in these hills carry a little piece of that tiny cub who once wobbled to her feet in a silent plea for safety. The change isn't just about animals. It's about how she relates to herself. Before Coda, she sometimes moved through her days as if the meaningful chapters were already finished. Children grown, career done, the big moral stories already told. After Coda, she understands that a heart can keep learning, keep loving, keep softening, even when the calendar says you should be settling down. She finds herself saying yes to more small chances to help, dropping off old towels at the sanctuary, checking in on a neighbor who lost a dog, leaving a dish of water near the far fence when the summer heat comes. None of it looks grand from the outside, but for her, each act carries the same quiet thread of kindness that ran from that first roadside moment through the sacred night shift, all the way to the spring release gate. It's as if one tiny bobcat heartbeat reminded her that her own heart is still needed here. Few rituals remain too. On certain mornings, when the air smells like snowmelt and pine, she pours 2 cups of coffee instead of 1 and catches herself talking out loud.
You'd like this,
She says, half smiling as she looks toward the tree line. Rabbits everywhere. Easy pickings. It's not grief, exactly. It's something softer. A remembrance that holds both love and laughter, woven through with gratitude. The story of Coda has become one of those heartwarming stories she carries like a well-worn stone in her pocket, reassuring to touch when the world feels cold. And it's changed the way she understands happy endings. When we're young, we're taught that happiness often looks like keeping the pet, keeping the person, keeping the moment forever. Coda gave her a different picture. Happy, in this case, meant strong legs running into brush, a spotted back disappearing without looking back, a wild life continuing far beyond human sight. Happy meant loyalty to the bobcat's nature, even when that meant letting go of her presence. There's a soulful kind of wisdom in that. Love is not always possession. Sometimes love is witness, support, and release. For many of us, especially in midlife and beyond, that idea rings true. Children leave home, parents pass on, friends move away, our bodies change. The story rarely wraps up as neatly as the fairy tales promised. Yet in the middle of all that, there can still be moments of real, steady love, the kind that doesn't depend on things staying the same. A wild animal like Coda shows us that our hearts are capable of more than we think. More patience, more courage, more gentle boundaries, more enduring kindness. And that kind of love doesn't vanish when paw prints fade from the road. It stays in how we see the world and ourselves. It's easy, in a busy, noisy culture, to feel like our quieter stories don't matter. But maybe your life already holds its own inspirational story. Not in headlines, but in the way you showed up for a scared dog, a stray cat, a hurt friend, a frightened grandchild, or even your own younger self. Maybe you've already lived through your own tiny bobcat cub moment, when something vulnerable came to you looking for safety, and you did your best with the time and strength you had. So before we close this chapter, take a breath and let yourself remember. Is there a small life or a small decision that softened your heart, even just a little? Something that reminded you that love and loyalty aren't just big words, but choices you make in the quiet. If Coda's journey and Eleanor's have stirred something in you, a little more tenderness for wild animals like bobcats, a little more respect for the hidden moral stories unfolding in the forests and fields around us, you're part of this too. Your attention, your empathy, your willingness to care, they all matter more than you know. If you'd like to keep walking with us through more gentle, heartwarming stories like this, stories of bobcat lives, wild neighbors, and the people who choose kindness even when no one is watching, I'd be honored if you'd tap like on this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if you feel moved to go one step further, you can use the Super Thanks button or donate through the links below. Your support helps real rehabilitators rescue, feed, heal, and safely release wild animals like Coda back into the places they belong. One tiny heartbeat at a time, we can make this world a little kinder for them and for us.